good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. In February 2026, the UFO story didn't come from a leak. It came from the top. On February 19th, 2026, President Donald Trump posted that he would direct agencies to identify and release files tied to UFOs, UAP, and even alien and extraterrestrial life. And that changes everything because release the files can mean anything from heavy redactions to names, dates, and programs that rewrite the history of this mystery.
Right.
So tonight we're opening the case. What was promised, what could realistically come out, and what might still stay locked behind national security, even if the truth is sitting right there on paper.
It's a moment that feels both inevitable and completely impossible at the exact same time. We are potentially watching the gears of history just grind into a completely new alignment here.
Yeah.
Or, we're watching the world's most sophisticated magic trick.
That is exactly the tension, isn't it? I mean, we're sitting here, you and I have this massive stack of research in front of us.
Yeah.
We've got articles, we've got transcripts, literal flight logs, and I feel like we're trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are from some Tom Clancy spy novel,
Right.
and the other half are straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, and don't forget the pieces from the geopolitical thriller, too, because that's really the third genre we have to contend with today.
Exactly. So for everyone listening to us right now, here is the mission for this deep dive. We aren't just going to sit here and read the tweets.
No.
We are going to deconstruct the entire timeline. We've got political analysis from commentators like Brian Tyler Cohen. We've got the boots on the ground digital tracking from Lisa Haven and Casper Site. And then we have the real high strangeness deep dives from the Leak Project.
And we really need to figure out if these are three totally separate stories or if they're one giant coordinated event. Because you have a political feud between a current and former president.
Right.
You have these really strange movements in the desert in the middle of the night. And hanging over all of it, you have the shadow of a major war looming in the Middle East.
It sounds like a literal conspiracy board when you lay it out like that, with the red string and everything.
It really does.
But let's start with the spark. Because before we get to the secret flights and all of that, this whole thing kicked off with a podcast interview.
Like the Obama interview.
Yeah. We're calling this the Obama-Trump paradox. It starts with former President Barack Obama sitting down with Brian Tyler Cohen. And it's this very loose format, right? They're chatting, they're relaxed, and they finally get to the end of the show. The speed round.
Which is traditionally where politicians are actually at their most rehearsed.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. They know the rapid-fire questions are coming. It's always like pizza or tacos, favorite movie, are aliens real?
Right. And usually the aliens answer is a completely standard script. You laugh, you say, I can't tell you, or I'd have to kill you. Everyone chuckles, and you move right along to the next question. But Obama, he didn't do that.
No, he didn't. He went off script in a very, very specific way.
So he said, and I'm quoting here, "They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in Area 51. There's no underground facility."
Okay, let's really analyze that sentence because the syntax here matters a lot. They're real, but I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
Logically, that is a wildly difficult position for a former head of state to hold. Because if you haven't seen them and you haven't seen the bodies or the craft, how can you state definitively that they are real?
Unless he's talking about, like, statistical probability, the Drake equation sort of thing.
Well, he tried to pivot to that later, but in the moment, in that chair, that phrasing heavily implies he was briefed. It implies that someone with higher clearance or a deeper need to know sat him down in the Oval Office and basically said, Mr. President, the phenomenon is real, but you don't need to see the hardware.
Which totally supports the idea that the president isn't actually at the top of the food chain on this specific issue.
Precisely.
But Casper Site pointed out something else about that clip. The delivery regarding Area 51.
The hesitation.
Yeah. He says they're not being kept in, Area 51? He acts like he's grasping for the name.
Right, which is a classic rhetorical feint. By pretending to forget the name of literally the most famous secret military base in global history, he's trying to trivialize the entire topic.
Like it's beneath him.
Exactly. It's a way of signaling, I'm way too serious a person to know the name of that silly place in the desert.
But it totally backfired. because the internet immediately jumped on it. Everyone was saying, why is he acting? Why is he stumbling over the most famous base on Earth?
And that pressure is what forced the walk back.
Oh.
Obama goes on Instagram later and basically says, hey, everyone, settle down. I was just talking about the vastness of the universe. Statistics say life must exist somewhere. I never saw any little green men.
Plausible deniability.
Yep. He retreated to the safe answer. It's just math, folks.
But here is where the story shifts from just a weird podcast clip to a literal constitutional crisis. President Trump enters the chat.
And this is where Brian Tyler Cohen's analysis becomes so crucial for us to unpack. We have to understand the legal concept of constructive admission.
Walk us through this, because when Peter Doocy asked Trump about Obama's comments, Trump didn't just call him crazy or brush it off?
No, he didn't. Trump said, and again I quote, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Okay, so here is my question. If I go on a show and I say, the moon is made of cheese, and the President of the United States says he just leaked classified information, what just happened?
You just officially confirmed that the moon is made of cheese.
Right.
Because you cannot classify a lie, you cannot classify a joke, you can only classify a fact.
So by accusing Obama of a leak,
Trump inadvertently confirmed the content of the leak.
wow.
Think about it. If Obama was just joking, it's not a security breach. If he was just talking about statistics and the vastness of space, that's not a security breach. The only way it is classified information is if the specific statement, aliens are real, is a protected United States government secret.
That is a massive logic trap.
It's a trap Trump walked right into because he wanted to attack Obama. He wanted to say, look at this guy. He's reckless with state secrets. But in doing so, he effectively stamped a top secret label on the statement itself.
Cohen called this a logic loop, and you can actually see Trump trying to wrestle with it in real time during that presser. Because Juicy presses him, right? He asks point blank, so are they real?
And Trump pivots immediately. He says, I don't know if they're real or not, but I can tell you he gave classified information.
Which makes absolutely zero sense. How can you not know if they're real, but know that talking about them is a leak?
Unless the program itself is the secret. But honestly, it just reads like a fumble. He got caught trying to score a political point and accidentally kicked open the door to full disclosure.
And he doubled down. He started talking about maybe needing to get Obama out of trouble by declassifying the information himself.
Which completely changes the entire motivation for what comes next. This isn't about scientific discovery anymore. This isn't about uniting humanity under the stars.
Yeah.
This is framed as a pure political power move. I will declassify the aliens just to prove my predecessor broke the law.
It's weaponized disclosure.
Exactly. Weaponized disclosure. It politicizes the single most profound question in human history. But, that political motivation led to a very real, tangible action.
The Truth Social Post.
Yep.
February 19, 2026. This is the document that kicked off the current frenzy we're in right now.
I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files.
Wait, stop right there. Secretary of War? I feel like a lot of mainstream media skimmed right past that, but our sources flagged it immediately. We don't have a Secretary of War, do we?
We do not. That position was abolished and reorganized under the National Security Act of 1947. It became the Secretary of the Army and ultimately the Secretary of Defense.
So why on earth use a title that has been dead for almost 80 years? Is it just, I don't know, Trump being Trump? Using an old school, powerful term.
I mean, it could be. He definitely likes archaic, powerful sounding language. But look at that date again, 1947.
Oh, Roswell.
Roswell. The Kenneth Arnold sightings. The birth of the CIA. The National Security Act itself. 1947 is the exact year the modern UFO phenomenon and the government cover-up of it began.
So by explicitly saying Secretary of War, he might be signaling that he knows where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively.
Or where the files started. It's a dog whistle to the deep history of the subject.
Yeah.
He's not asking the current Secretary of Defense for today's drone reports. He's rhetorically reaching back to the War Department era when the intense secrecy actually started.
That gives me chills.
It should.
Because it implies a level of knowledge that goes way beyond just, hey, show me the Navy FLIR videos.
Yeah.
But speaking of knowledge, we have to talk about Lara Trump.
Yeah.
Because she went on a podcast and dropped this breadcrumb that suggests this whole thing wasn't just a spontaneous reaction to Obama.
The speech in the drawer.
Yeah, so she admits her father-in-law plays coy about aliens with the family, but then she says she believes he actually has a specific speech prepared about extraterrestrial life that he intends to give at the right time.
Think about the massive implications of that. A prepared speech implies a plan. It implies that the administration has already decided what the truth is, and they have drafted the exact language to tell the world. They're literally just waiting for the trigger.
So Obama's interview might have just been the trigger? Or maybe just the convenient excuse.
It gave him the opening. But if the speech is already written, it means the policy is already set. We aren't waiting for a congressional investigation. We are just waiting for a press conference.
Okay, so we have all this political maneuvering, we have the announcement, but while the entire world was staring at their phones, dissecting the Secretary of War comment and fighting on social media, something very, very strange was happening in the real world, out in the desert.
Section 3 of our deep dive. The flight.
Yes. Lisa Haven tracked this down, and honestly, this feels like the opening scene of a techno thriller. Walk us through the timeline here.
Okay, so it's the early morning of Friday, February 20th, just hours after Trump's evening announcement. Most of the East Coast is fast asleep. But at Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, the Janet terminal is highly active.
And for any of you listening who haven't fallen down this specific rabbit hole, explain what Janet is.
Right, Janet Airlines. It's the unofficial nickname for the highly classified fleet of Boeing 737s. You've probably seen pictures. They have a white body with a single red stripe down the side.
Yep.
They're operated by the Air Force to ferry defense contractors and employees from Vegas to the Nevada National Security Site.
The literal daily shuttle bus to Area 51.
Correct. Now, usually these flights run on a very standard commuter schedule. They take off at 7 a.m., maybe 8 a.m., getting people to the base for a normal workday. But this specific flight, it took off at 4:06 a.m.
4:06 a.m. That is pitch black out there.
And it headed straight for the Tonopah Test Range and the Nellis Complex. Lisa Haven calls this the shell game theory, and honestly, it is a critical piece of this entire puzzle.
The shell game? You mean like the street hustle?
Right.
Where the guy hides the pea under the cup and moves them around?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the shoes of the deep state, the gatekeepers of this secret. The president just went public. He just ordered the immediate release of files and, presumably, a physical inspection of the facilities. If you have a recovered craft sitting in a hangar at Area 51 or boxes of highly sensitive biological documents, what do?
You move them immediately, before the inspectors can even get on a plane.
You move them. You load them onto a secure transport like a Janet flight at 4 a.m., and you fly them out to Dugway Proving Ground in Utah. Or maybe you fly them to a private contractor facility, like a Lockheed Martin or a Battelle installation.
Because those are technically private property.
Right, which makes it significantly harder for a government audit to penetrate quickly. They can hide behind corporate trade secrets.
So when the president's transition team or inspectors kick open the hangar doors at Area 51 on Monday morning,
the room is completely empty, swept clean, and they say, "See, Mr. President," just like Obama said, they aren't at Area 51.
Oh my God, it's a bureaucratic magic trick. And it makes me wonder about Obama's specific phrasing again. They aren't at Area 51. Was he being entirely literal, like they aren't there anymore?
It's highly possible. I mean, the base at Groom Lake is way too famous now. It's basically a tourist attraction for people in RVs. If you wanted to keep the biggest secret in human history in 2026, you absolutely wouldn't keep it at the one place everyone on Earth is looking.
So the 4 a.m. flight might have been the final scrubbing operation, getting the last bits of physical evidence out of the way so the grand disclosure can reveal absolutely nothing.
Or it was moving the active projects out so that the disclosure can reveal the old projects.
What do you mean?
Like, here's the Roswell wreckage from the 40s. Enjoy the museum exhibit. Meanwhile, we're flying the modern anti-gravity drive out to Utah.
That is such a depressing thought. We get the history lesson, and they get to keep the actual tech.
Right.
But there is a much darker theory we need to discuss. Because we can't ignore the rest of the world. The distraction theory.
Yes. Because while we are hyper-focused on flight trackers in Nevada, we really should be looking at marine traffic in the Persian Gulf.
Lisa Haven really hammered this point in her coverage, and I think it's the one that makes people most uncomfortable. We are looking at a potential wag the dog scenario.
Wag the dog, meaning a completely manufactured crisis or a sensational news story perfectly timed to distract the public from an unpopular war or scandal.
So for the listener, what exactly is the situation in Iran right now?
It's critical. Military sources are reporting a 90% probability of kinetic action within weeks.
90%?
Yes. And the language being used in these intelligence circles isn't surgical strike or targeted operation. It's campaign. It's regime change.
That sounds like a full-scale ground war.
It does. And look at the naval assets moving into the region. You have the USS Abraham Lincoln. You have the USS Theodore Roosevelt. These are massive carrier strike groups. You do not move that kind of tonnage across the ocean just to rattle a saber. You move it because you intend to use it.
And the timing of all this.
The reports of this severe escalation, the actual 90% figure, dropped on February 19th, the exact same day as the UFO announcement on Truth Social.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for just a second. Could it just be a massive coincidence the world is a very busy, chaotic place?
It could be. But in high-level intelligence and geopolitics, pure coincidences are incredibly rare. If you know you are about to launch a major war that might spike global oil prices, cause massive casualties, and severely anger half the globe, you need a distraction.
Right.
You need a story so universally captivating that it knocks World War III right off the front page.
And "we found aliens" is literally the only headline bigger than "we invaded Iran."
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sucks all the oxygen right out of the room. The mainstream media, the public, independent podcasters, we all instantly pivot to looking at the sky. Meanwhile, the troops move into position on the ground, completely unchallenged by public scrutiny.
It's terrifyingly effective. I mean, look at us. We are deep into this analysis, and we're just now getting around to talking about the actual impending war.
That's the entire point. The distraction works flawlessly. But there is a crucial nuance here that we can't overlook. Just because it's a distraction doesn't mean the UFO story is fake.
Right. They could be using real disclosure as the smokescreen.
Precisely. The government might finally be willing to burn the UFO secret, which, let's face it, is 80 years old and getting much harder to keep anyway with smartphones and commercial satellites, in order to cover the immediate tactical movements of a brand new war. It's a calculated trade-off. Give them the aliens so they don't see the tanks.
Wow. That connects perfectly to the idea of a script. That this isn't just random chaos unfolding, it's a planned rollout. And the Leak Project pointed out some really weird data from the financial sector that totally supports this.
The polymarket anomalies.
Yeah. So apparently there were betting lines on Trump declassifies UFOs in 2026.
Yeah.
And right before the announcement went live, the betting volume just massively spiked.
The house never loses. When you see betting volume spike on a very specific, obscure outcome, just hours before it happens in real life, that screams insider knowledge.
Someone knew the tweet was coming.
Someone knew the exact schedule. This wasn't Trump getting mad at Obama and rage tweeting from his phone. This was a scheduled public event on a predetermined timeline.
Which brings up the Haim Eshed connection. Remind a listener who he is, because this is wild.
Haim Eshed. He's the former head of Israel's space security program. A very serious man with impeccable, very serious credentials. A few years ago, he went on the record and claimed that the U.S. and Israel have actually been in contact with the Galactic Federation for years.
And he specifically said Trump knew about it.
He did. He said Trump was on the verge of revealing it during his first term, but the Federation explicitly stopped him. They supposedly told him that humanity wasn't ready.
So if we follow that logic all the way through, what changed? Is February 2026 the exact moment we magically became ready?
Or is it simply the moment the script called for it? Rex from the Leak Project talks a lot about this concept of the scroll.
The scroll.
Yeah, the idea that there is a rigid, deterministic timeline managed by higher intelligences or perhaps a highly advanced breakaway human civilization.
So you're saying Trump, Obama, the Ayatollah, they're all just actors hitting their marks on a stage?
It's a huge philosophical question. If the timing is this precise, aligning perfectly with the war mobilization, aligning with the betting market spikes, it certainly feels orchestrated. Whether the ultimate conductor of that orchestra is human or non-human is the massive open question.
Let's pivot back to the actual files for a minute. Because if the script says, release the files, what are we actually going to see when the boxes are opened? There is a lot of palpable fear in the disclosure community right now that it's going to be a giant nothing burger.
The fear of redaction.
Yeah.
That we just get 1,000 pages of black ink and blurry weather balloons.
Right, because we've been burned before. Project Blue Book, AARO, they always release these fuzzy, unidentifiable blobs on Gen 4 night vision. But the Leak Project and Casper site are suggesting there is actual good stuff in there if Trump forces it out, specifically regarding nuclear sites.
This is the Robert Hastings research, the UFOs and nukes connection.
This is the stuff that genuinely keeps me up at night.
Hastings has interviewed over 120 military witnesses. And we are not talking about random people seeing lights in the sky. We are talking about launch control officers.
The guys with the literal keys in the underground bunker.
Yes, highly trained, psychologically vetted officers.
And what's the recurring story they tell?
A craft appears over the active missile silo, usually silent, hovering.
Hmm.
And the nuclear missiles suddenly go offline. They drop to no-go status on the control boards.
They just shut them down.
Unilaterally. The United States Air Force completely loses control of its nuclear deterrent while the object is overhead.
If the files Trump releases officially confirm that that isn't just a historical curiosity, that is an active national security nightmare.
It completely changes the narrative from a philosophical "are we alone" to a terrifying "are we defenseless?" Because if there is a technology operating in our airspace that can turn off our nukes at will, then the entire global concept of mutually assured destruction is completely void.
It certainly makes the Secretary of War title seem a lot more appropriate.
It really does.
But then we have to talk about the woo.
Ah, the woo.
A high strangeness, because you dig into these files, and it's not all nuts and bolts metal ships. The Leak Project brought up some experiencer accounts that are, well, they totally defy the standard gray alien sci-fi trope.
The Submariner account is a perfect example of this.
Tell us about the Submariner.
This is a fascinating, deeply weird account. A retired Navy submariner who claimed he was a lifelong abductee. He faced these terrifying nighttime experiences repeatedly throughout his life. But he noted one major, undeniable anomaly.
Which was?
The abduction stopped completely whenever he was deployed underwater on the sub.
So hundreds of feet of ocean water is a barrier?
It implies a physical limitation, doesn't it? It suggests that whatever these entities are, or whatever localized technology they use to pull people out of their beds, it cannot penetrate deep water. Or perhaps they simply avoid the ocean entirely for other reasons.
That makes them feel significantly less godlike. If they can be stopped by just diving under the ocean, they have rules, they have limits.
Exactly. It grounds the phenomenon in physics, even if it's a branch of physics we don't fully understand yet.
And then we have to mention the cockroach man.
I know, that the name is completely absurd.
But the core description from the witnesses is consistent.
Witnesses independently describing insectoid entities. Timothy the Tooth was another description from childhood friends of the source. A shape that literally looked like a giant tooth or a bizarre old cartoon character walking around.
See, when you hear that, it just sounds like a pure hallucination. Or sleep paralysis.
But when you have multiple independent witnesses describing the exact same absurdity in the same room, you have to pay attention. It suggests the phenomenon might not be people from another solar system. It might be interdimensional. Or it might be something that actively masks itself using our own psychological imagery.
Masking, which leads perfectly into the 3D printing theory. This was a totally new concept for me, and it blew my mind.
It deeply connects the cattle mutilations to the entities themselves. We've all heard of the mutilations for decades. Surgical cuts, missing blood, specific missing organs, no tracks around the carcass.
Gross, but incredibly well documented by local law enforcement.
So the theory asks, why do they need the biological material? They certainly aren't eating it. The speculation is that they are harvesting raw, local DNA and biological material to literally print bodies.
Like an avatar suit.
Exactly like that. If you are a pure energy being or an advanced AI or an interdimensional traveler, you physically cannot survive in our atmosphere. The pressure, the bacteria, it's toxic to you. So you create a biological drone, what we call a gray, using local Earth materials.
You print a suit, upload your consciousness into it, and go to work in our dimension.
It perfectly explains why all the grays look exactly the same. They don't look like an evolved species, they look mass-produced.
They're hardware or wetware.
Right. If the released files contain classified autopsy reports that show these bodies have no digestive systems or show clear signs of genetic manufacturing, that confirms the avatar theory.
That is deeply, deeply unsettling, but it makes a twisted kind of logical sense. So we have all these theories swirling around, the nukes, the avatars, the war in Iran. How is the actual disclosure community reacting to this moment? Kaspersite did a sort of temperature check across the board.
It's a wild mix of people taking victory laps and people holding on to deep, deep skepticism.
Who is taking the victory lap right now?
Dr. Stephen Greer, for one. I mean, he's been talking about this nonstop for 30 years. For him, a direct presidential order to release the files is the ultimate final validation of his life's work.
And Anna Paulina Luna in Congress.
The congresswoman, yes. She's treating this as a massive procedural win. She's the chairwoman of the UAP task force. She's publicly preparing to review the raw footage. She represents the institutional government acceptance of the topic.
And then there's the Bob Lazar crowd. Autism Capital had that massive viral tweet saying basically everyone owes Bob Lazar an apology right now.
Because if the files confirm that Area 51 or S4 actually had retrieved craft, Lazar is totally vindicated. He instantly becomes the most important, truthful whistleblower in modern history.
But then you have people like Nick Pope, the man from the ministry.
The absolute voice of bureaucratic reason. Pope worked the UFO desk for the UK Ministry of Defense. He knows exactly how the administrative system works from the inside. And his warning to the community is simple: do not celebrate yet.
Because the system always fights back.
Because an executive order is ultimately just a piece of paper. The intelligence agencies, the CIA, the NRO, the Air Force Special Access Programs, they have had 80 years to learn how to compartmentalize and hide things. They can easily release 1 million pages of boring administrative logs and legally withhold the 10 pages that actually matter.
They can just say, we fully complied with the order, Mr. President. Here are the purchase receipts for the coffee machines at Rugged Well.
Exactly. Pope says that unless there is a definitive smoking gun, like a piece of exotic tech, a verified body, or a clear, unassailable 4K video released directly from the White House podium, the ambiguity will just remain. The cover-up will just mutate.
Yeah, so we are standing on the edge of a cliff here. We might finally fly, or we might just fall right back into the fog for another 50 years.
And that brings us to the synthesis, the ultimate so what of tonight's deep dive.
We've covered a massive amount of ground: the constructive admission logic trap, the Secretary of War dog whistle, the 4 a.m. Janet flight to Tenopa, the looming war in Iran, the 3D printed biological avatars.
It's an incredible amount to process. But for you, the listener, here is the absolute core takeaway. The door has been kicked open.
You can't unring the bell.
You really can't. Once a sitting or incoming president, regardless of his personal or political motivation, publicly orders the release of alien files, the topic is simply no longer fringe.
Right. It's no longer just tinfoil hat territory on late-night radio. It is officially executive branch policy.
The stigma is dead. Or at the very least, it's actively dying.
But I know you have one final thought on this, a provocation for the audience to mull over.
I do. It's something to chew on regarding that 4 a.m. flight and the prepared speech.
Lay it on us.
We talked about the Janet flight potentially moving physical material out of Area 51. And we talked about Trump having a specific speech sitting in a drawer for the right time.
Right.
What if the files that get released next month are real but completely irrelevant?
Irrelevant how?
Think about it. If the files definitively reveal what happened in 1947 or 1960 or 1980, that's just history. It's absolutely fascinating, earth-shattering history, but it's still history. If that Janet flight moved the current technology, the working craft, the active modern reverse engineering programs to a new, untouchable dark site, then the files we are about to get are really just a museum brochure.
Oh, wow. They give us the past to protect the present.
Exactly. They might publicly admit we were not alone, while fiercely keeping the secret that we are still not alone.
And if the president has a speech waiting for the right time, and he hasn't given it yet, it really makes you wonder who is actually holding the clock. Is it the president? Or is it the intelligence that told Hayam Esha humanity had to wait?
Who is actually in charge of the truth? That is the ultimate question you have to ask yourself.
Well, on that profoundly unsettling note, I think I'm going to go intensely check the flight trackers. And maybe the news ticker for the Persian Gulf.
Keep one eye on the sky and one eye on the news, my friend.
Always. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Good day.